In this episode, we talk about the centre withholding Tamil Nadu's Samagra Shiksha funds. We also talk about Leader of Opposition Rahul Gandhi not being allowed to speak in the Lok Sabha. But first, we talk about India's efforts towards integrating new tools for eliminating tuberculosis from the country. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. India accounts for 28 lakh estimated tuberculosis cases and 3.15 lakh deaths, contributing to 29% of the global TB burden. The country's national effort to eliminate tuberculosis is now integrating a new set of tools ranging from AI-powered screening to strip tests for treatment adherence. These innovations, reviewed by national experts and featured in a recent conference, are being considered for integration into the National TB Elimination Program as the country continues its push to meet its target of TB elimination by this year. In this segment, my colleague Ichha Sharma is joined by the Indian Express's Anonna Dutt, who discusses the technological additions and their integration into India's TB elimination drive.
Anonna, could you start by telling us how serious is the TB situation in India, and also what makes TB such a stubborn disease to eliminate, especially in a country like ours?
TB is a big problem for India, especially considering that India accounts for nearly 26% of the global cases and about 29% of the global deaths due to the disease. And it's a challenge because other than people who are suffering from an active infection, the pathogen can actually live on in other people and cause the infection later when their immune system is not working well. And even among the people who have an active infection, there might be people who do not show symptoms. So there are asymptomatic TB cases as well, which again makes it a challenge to detect and then treat them for it.
Right, and India set a goal to eliminate TB by the end of this year, which is actually 5 years ahead of the global target itself. So can you tell us what are the current gaps in TB screening and treatment that are being explored for research and innovation?
So the World Health Organization estimates every year how many TB patients there are in each country. And India has a gap of detection. So, for example, India has about 28 lakh cases that WHO says it should have. And we are able to detect about, say, 25 lakh cases, which means we're missing out on detecting and treating about 2 to 3 lakh TB patients who can then go on to, spread the infection to others. So other than detecting patients, it's also putting them on treatment and ensuring that they complete the treatment so they are cured of TB. So right now, it was a lower number, but now we put about more than 80% of the patients that we detect on TB treatment. But it is still a challenge to ensure that they continue with it because the patients have to take the medicines for months. Ranging from 4 months to even 2 years in some cases, depending on the type of TB that they have. So that is another challenge. The third challenge is just getting the drugs to people. Last year, there was a shortage of TB drugs in the country because of some procurement issues. So that led to a lot of problem. What happens if you miss, your drugs for TB treatment? You might get a resistant infection, which is more difficult to treat and requires longer duration of treatment.
And it was for a recent conference for TB elimination where a lot of research prospects were discussed. So how were the top ideas selected for, possible rollout?
It is under the ICMR. So ICMR, to support the national program, started event since last year, which is to look at innovations that can help the national program. And under this, a conference was held last week in Delhi, where 228 technologies from across the world were displayed, and a group of experts actually reviewed these technologies on, various parameters, whether they are ready to be used in a program. So have they undergone all the required trials? whether it is feasible to implement it in poor resource setting areas in India as well. So these were the various parameters on which the innovations were graded, and the national experts selected about 5 types of technologies which can in the future be included under the national program.
And Anonna, talking about testing, apart from usual sputum test, which, examines a sample of phlegm to detect infections in the lungs, could you talk about the new ways of detecting TB, and also why these new tests, which use blood or saliva, are considered so pivotal?
So the problem is right now when we do the sputum tests, a lot of patients, especially the children, cannot give sputum samples. So it becomes a task to detect TB in these patients. The new tests can help in this aspect.
Right. And you also speak about a LAMP test in your research. So could you tell us what this is, and also how does it compare to PCR testing in regard to TB patients?
So what this test does, just like RT-PCR, it uses the small genetic material in the patient sample, amplifies it to see whether the pathogen is present. But RT-PCR is a more advanced test. It requires more resources. So RT-PCR basically works by changing the temperature up and down to amplify the genetic material, whereas a LAMP test can be conducted with a same temperature. So it does not require a thermal cycler, meaning it is less resource intensive. It is cheaper than RT-PCR, but it works in the same way. It amplifies the genetic material in the patient sample to see whether the pathogen is present.
And Anonna, from a patient's point of view, how much easier or quicker are these new diagnostic methods?
So from the patient point of view, it doesn't really matter because, we don't usually bother with what test we are getting as long as we get the results. What this would make sure is, once included in the program, it would make sure that there is more availability of tests for TB and more, detecting these in different kinds of samples, which means that patients who cannot produce sputum can also get a test. So it is a benefit for the national program because this would help us in detecting more and more cases and reaching out to those, missing cases that I mentioned earlier.
Right. And you also speak of how AI comes into play, in reading X-rays and lab slides. So how exactly does this work? And is it better or faster than manual screening?
So the artificial intelligence is essentially trained on microscopy slides and X-rays of TB patients and healthy people, and they are trained to distinguish between the two. So these models are trained to recognize which slides or which X-rays are that of the patients and which are for healthy individuals. And it helps in automating the process, so it can read the slides or X-rays much faster than a technician would be able to. And secondly, it also would allow for diagnosis in places where a technician might not be present. So it's not about significantly improving the detection. It's about taking the tests to people where it's not available.
And Anonna, you've also highlighted in your article that one of the biggest challenges with TB is that patients stop taking medicines. So why does this happen? And also, what's being proposed to solve this?
So, like I said, TB treatment is a very long-term treatment. The TB treatment can last anywhere between 4 months to 2 years, depending on whether a person has drug-susceptible TB or drug-resistant TB. So, in many cases, the patients do start feeling better after the first few months and stop taking the medicines. That's a big challenge with the TB program. And to address that, they are now coming up with tests that can actually tell whether a person has taken the medicines, and it doesn't depend on the patient telling the doctor whether they have taken the medicine or not.
Right, and you also speak about a strip test that can help with this. So could you break down for us how does that work?
So this test, a strip test, can be used where the person puts their saliva on the strip and it can tell whether they have taken one of the most commonly prescribed drug, rifampicin, if they've taken it in the last 24 hours.
And lastly, Anonna, another challenge with TB is drug resistance. So can you tell us why is it such a growing concern in TB cases? And also, is there any new research that helps us detect if TB medicines are working or not?
Drug resistance is a challenge in tuberculosis because, like I mentioned, if people stop taking the drugs, then the pathogens become used to the medicine and they develop mechanisms to not be affected, and therefore the infections get drug resistant. And a patient with drug resistance TB would also transmit the same pathogen to others, which can also increase the odds of other people getting drug resistant TB. That's why it's a growing challenge. So, next generation sequencing, where the genetic sequence of the TB pathogen is mapped, and it can tell the patient whether they are resistant to any of the 15 anti-tuberculosis medicines. So that is a big relief for drug resistance tuberculosis in the country, because right now, if patients are not able to get the resistance test, or they are tested for usually tested for one medicine, which is again rifampicin, and they are found to be not resistant, they are given the drugs that are meant for people with drug susceptible tuberculosis. And that can be a challenge. If they are resistant to some of the drugs, it won't cure the TB appropriately, and that would lead to treatment failure. So this test can tell in one go whether a person is resistant to some 15 of the medicines. The problem is this test costs a lot. It costs about rupees 5,000 to 10,000 per person right now, which is very expensive for a national program. So it's unlikely to be included just yet, but cost of the tests does come down. So for example, an RT-PCR test before the pandemic would cost about 1,200 to 2,000, but now is available for as little as like 200 rupees. So once that happens, it can be included in the program as well.
Next, we talk about the centre withholding funds for the Samagra Shiksha scheme in Tamil Nadu due to the state's refusal to implement the new education policy, or NEP, of 2020. The Samagra Shiksha scheme is the country's flagship program for school education, which covers basic expenses of government schools across the country, from preschool to class 12, including salaries of teachers, construction of new classrooms, uniforms, books, etc. The scheme works in a 60-40 ratio, where 60% of the funds are provided by the centre and 40% is looked after by the state. The reason behind this conflict is the three-language formula under the National Education Policy of 2020.
Tamil Nadu was expected to have signed a memorandum of understanding for something called the PM Shri scheme, which is to set up PM Shri schools in Tamil Nadu last year.
That's the Indian Express's Abhinaya Harigovind.
Except when they sent the memorandum of understanding to the centre, the MOU left out a paragraph on the implementation of the NEP. So the MOU on PM Shri, which states are expected to sign with the centre, specifically mentions that the state is required to, that the state will implement the NEP in full. So Tamil Nadu, when it sent this NEP, had left that out because it has opposed other aspects of the NEP as well, not just the three-language formula, but other aspects of it. But since then, the centre has maintained that it has tied the release of Samagra Shiksha funds with PM Shri. So it has not released funds under the Samagra Shiksha scheme to Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu has claimed that about 2,152 crores worth of central funding for Samagra Shiksha remains pending.
In this segment, Abhinaya talks about the three-language formula and why it has become a bone of contention between Tamil Nadu and the centre. Abhinaya, can you give us a little bit of a background on this language debate that has been going on for decades now?
Yeah, so the question of the languages that are to be taught in schools and the medium of instruction has existed for many decades now. That's ever since after independence or soon after independence, the question has persisted. So there was a commission that was headed by Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, which looked into the question. And that was the commission that first brought in the idea of the three-language formula. They suggested that one language be the language in which the federal activities be carried out, which is Hindi. The other language be a regional language. And the third one would be English. It was also part of the 1968 National Policy on Education, which was the first National Policy on Education. This was under the Indira Gandhi government. So in the 1968 Policy on Education as well, the three-language formula which meant that in the non-Hindi speaking states, Hindi would be taught, and in the Hindi speaking states, one of the southern languages would be taught. So that's what the 1968 National Policy on Education said on 3 languages. And this was reiterated in the 1986 National Policy on Education, which is that English, Hindi, and one regional language, which is that a southern language in a Hindi-speaking state and Hindi in a non-Hindi speaking state. So this was what the earlier National Policies on Education had said on the 3 language policy.
And can you tell us about the significance of the new education policy of 2020 or the NEP 2020?
The new education policy is India's third education policy. It essentially lays a set of goals for the education system, both in school education as well as in higher education for the next few years. It's like a vision for what education is to be like and what the system is to work towards.
Right. So what is the 3 language formula that is at the center of this language debate, which is a part of the NEP?
So the new education policy of 2020 is a little different from the earlier education policies on the matter of the 3 language formula in the sense that it is a little more flexible. So where the earlier education policies had specifically said that the languages will be Hindi, English, and other modern Indian language, the NEP of 2020 does not specifically mention Hindi. So it says that the 3 languages that students will learn in schools can be any 3 languages, provided that at least 2 of those 3 languages are native to India. So this can mean English or any other language and 2 other languages that are native to India. So it doesn't specifically mention Hindi. And since the whole controversy over this matter of 3 languages, the union government has maintained that it is not attempting to impose any sort of language, and that the NEP actually leaves it up to the states to decide what 2 regional languages or what 2 Indian languages they want to teach.
But Abhinaya, the point of the 3 language formula was to enable students from across the country to be able to get employment and become a part of the federal system. So what is the issue as far as the Tamil Nadu government is concerned?
So they see this as part of the union government's effort to impose Hindi as well as the national education policy, which they have opposed on other grounds as well.
And you mentioned that the 3 language formula is one of the issues that the Tamil Nadu government has as far as the NEP is concerned. So what are the other grounds on which the state is opposing the new education policy?
So in addition to the 3 language policy of the NEP, Tamil Nadu has also opposed other aspects of the NEP. It has not been in favor of a national policy. So the DMK in Tamil Nadu has opposed the idea of a common education policy that will apply across states, since education is in the concurrent list of the constitution. Something else that Tamil Nadu has opposed as part of the NEP is common entrance exams for undergraduate courses. It has also opposed the 4-year undergraduate degree program. They have had concerns about the possibility of increasing dropouts in such cases. So altogether, there have been a few different aspects of the NEP that Tamil Nadu has opposed, in addition to the 3 language policy.
And Abhinaya, in the beginning, you told us how this 3 language formula has been a part of political discussions since many, many years. So what has been the center's stance over this?
So the centre has actually maintained that education is in the concurrent list of the constitution, which means that it is up to the states to implement things like the 3 language policy, and that they can only support this in different ways. So back in 2004, the then Human Resource Development Minister, who's Arjun Singh of the Congress, had said in Parliament that the central government's role in implementing the 3 language formula is recommendatory, and that it is the sole responsibility of the states to implement it. When Smriti Irani was HRD minister, she had said something similar in 2014, which is that it is up to the states to finalize their own curriculum and syllabus for something like this. So what the centre has not done earlier is that they have not tied the release of the centre's share of funds for different schemes to the implementation of the national education policy or other schemes.
But Abhinaya, is this issue between the Tamil Nadu government and the centre impacting the students' education since the Samagra Shiksha fund has been stopped?
So Tamil Nadu has since then said that it would pay the 2,152 crores that the center owes to it for Samagra Shiksha, it would pay that amount out of its own pocket. So this it had said earlier this month when the budget was announced.
And in the end, we talk about leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi not being allowed to speak in the Lok Sabha. Yesterday, Congress MPs met Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla to raise the issue of denial of opportunity as the House was adjourned as soon as Rahul Gandhi got up to speak. The Congress's deputy leader in the Lok Sabha, Gaurav Gogoi, General Secretary K.C. Venugopal, Whip Manikam Tagore and 70 other MPs met Birla following the Speaker's remarks asking Gandhi to adhere to the rules that the members are expected to observe to uphold the dignity of the House. Birla said members are expected to conduct themselves in a manner that maintains the high standards and dignity of the House. As Gandhi rose to speak, Birla adjourned the House. After the adjournment, Gandhi told the reporters that the House was not being run as per democratic norms and that as the leader of the opposition, whenever he stands up, he should be allowed to speak. When he was asked about the Speaker's comments regarding Gandhi needing to remain within the limits of dignity, he responded, quote, "I haven't done anything. In the last 7 or 8 days, I have not been allowed to speak. This is a new way where there is space for opposition and government in a democracy. Here there is no space for the opposition. Only the government has space. When the PM spoke on Kumbh Mela, I wanted to add that it was good and I wanted to say something about unemployment, but I wasn't allowed to. I don't know what the thinking of the Speaker is. I am the LOP and our party is the main opposition party. We are not allowed to speak." Unquote. As Venugopal concluded his speech during a discussion on the issues of public importance, Birla made remarks regarding the expected conduct of the members. The reason for the Speaker's observation was not immediately clear. The Speaker said, quote, "Several instances have come to my notice where the conduct of members does not conform with the high standards." Unquote. He further added, quote, "In this house, father and daughter, mother and daughter, husband and wife have been members. In this context, I expect the leader of opposition to conduct himself in accordance with the Rule 349 that deals with the rules to be observed by members in the House." Unquote. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's episode was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Ichha Sharma and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.